When rejection happens, most men don't realize that control silently shifts in that moment. She rejects, and with that rejection comes an expectation that you will explain yourself, chase clarity, seek validation, or try to change her mind. That expectation gives her emotional leverage. She feels certain, she feels in control of the outcome. But when you respond with calm silence instead of pursuit, that control quietly dissolves, not through force, not through manipulation, but through emotional discipline. Silence after rejection isn't weakness, it's self-respect. It communicates that you heard her choice, accepted it, and didn't need to fight reality to feel okay about yourself. That alone disrupts the script she expected. Instead of feeling pursued, she feels uncertainty. Instead of feeling validated, she feels questioned. And uncertainty is uncomfortable when someone thought they had everything figured out. When you don't react the way she imagined, her mind starts filling the gap. She wonders why you didn't chase. She questions whether the rejection affected you at all. She starts asking herself if she misread your emotional investment. That internal questioning is powerful because it turns her attention inward. The moment she begins thinking about your silence is the moment control shifts back to you. Rejection often comes with an unspoken desire for reassurance, not reassurance that you'll stay, but reassurance that she mattered, that she had an emotional impact. When you remove yourself calmly, that reassurance disappears. There's no dramatic reaction for her to lean on, no emotional response to justify her decision. And without that feedback, doubt enters quietly, not because you said anything, but because you didn't. Your silence also communicates boundaries. It says you don't beg to be chosen. You don't negotiate your worth. You don't chase people who are unsure. That level of self-respect creates a psychological contrast. It separates you from men who react emotionally and immediately, and contrast is what forces reevaluation. When she compares your response to past experiences, your silence stands out. What hurts isn't punishment, it's absence. The absence of validation, the absence of reaction, the absence of emotional availability. She expected engagement. She received composure. And composure after rejection signals strength. It suggests that your value wasn't dependent on her decision. That realization can be unsettling because it challenges the belief that she held the upper hand. Silence doesn't attack her ego directly, it simply stops feeding it. And when the supply ends, awareness begins. That awareness is where emotional discomfort grows, not because you try to hurt her, but because you chose to respect yourself. Calm silence after rejection is where power returns naturally. Silence after rejection doesn't create pain through words, it creates it through absence. When you disappear calmly, the emotional contrast becomes impossible to ignore. While you were present, your energy, attention, and consistency were part of her emotional environment. Once that presence is removed, the space you occupied becomes noticeable. And that space carries weight. People don't always feel the value of something while it's there, they feel it when it's gone. At first, rejection feels like relief to her. The pressure is gone, the decision is made, but silence removes the emotional confirmation she expected to follow. There's no chasing, no emotional spillover, no proof that she was deeply, deeply needed. Without that reinforcement, her mind begins to register the absence. She starts noticing small things, the lack of messages, the quiet moments where your attention used to exist, the emotional calm that now feels strangely empty. Absence forces emotional awareness. When interaction stops, feelings don't disappear, they surface. Silence removes distraction and leaves room for reflection. She begins to compare how things felt when you were around versus how they feel now. And if your presence added warmth, stability, or positive energy, that contrast hits deeply. Emotional absence is far more powerful than emotional argument because it cannot be ignored or rationalized away. Silence also changes the emotional pace. When communication is constant, emotions stay flat. There's no space for longing. But when you step away, longing has room to grow. She may not label it immediately, but she feels it. A sense of missing something familiar, a subtle emotional discomfort that wasn't there before. That discomfort isn't dramatic, it's quiet, persistent, and hard to dismiss. What makes this hurt deeper is that it's self generated. You didn't say anything to trigger it. You didn't remind her of your value. Her own emotional system does the work. That's why silence is so effective. It doesn't create resistance. There's nothing to argue against, nothing to defend, just the reality of absence. Emotional absence also challenges her narrative. She may have believed that rejecting you would end the emotional connection cleanly, but silence reveals that connection doesn't dissolve instantly. It lingers in memory, in routine, in emotional expectation, and realizing that something meaningful is no longer accessible can sting more than expected. Your silence allows her to feel the consequences of her choice without confrontation. It's not punishment, it's reality. And reality, felt quietly over time, leaves a deeper impression than any emotional reaction ever could. Absence makes the truth felt, not explained. After rejection, there's often an unspoken expectation that you'll still provide emotional validation, not validation that you'll stay, but validation that she mattered, that she had an effect on you, that her decision carried weight. Many people don't consciously realize this expectation, but it exists beneath the surface. When you go silent, that validation disappears, and that absence can quietly shake her more than words ever could. Ego feeds on confirmation. It wants proof that it was desired, impactful, and influential. When someone rejects another person, part of the ego expects a response: disappointment, pursuit, emotional explanation, or even frustration. Those reactions reinforce a sense of importance. They say, my choice mattered, I was significant, but when your silence replaces reaction, that reinforcement never comes. The ego is left without feedback, and that creates discomfort. Silence doesn't insult her ego, it starves it. There's no emotional mirror reflecting her importance back to her, no reassurance that she was deeply wanted, and without that reassurance, self-questioning begins. She starts wondering why you didn't chase, why you didn't try to convince her, why you didn't react the way others usually do. That questioning doesn't boost her confidence, it unsettles it. This discomfort often shows up internally, not outwardly. She may act unaffected, but inside she's processing a lack of confirmation she expected to receive. The rejection was supposed to place her above the situation. Your silence removes that feeling of elevation. Instead of feeling chosen as the decision maker, she feels unsure about how much power that decision actually carried. What makes this powerful is that you didn't do anything aggressive or manipulative. You simply stepped away with dignity. That dignity communicates self-worth. It suggests that your value wasn't dependent on her approval. And when someone realizes they weren't the emotional center of the situation, it can sting, not because they wanted to hurt you, but because they expected to be emotionally significant. Silence also forces a comparison. She subconsciously compares you to others who reacted emotionally in the past. Men who begged, men who argued, men who stayed around hoping for another chance. Your silence stands apart. It creates contrast, and contrast highlights value. The absence of validation becomes louder because it's rare. Without your emotional response, she's left alone with her thoughts, and those thoughts often revolve around questions of worth and impact. Did I misjudge him? Did he care less than I thought? Or did he care enough to respect himself? That uncertainty lingers because it isn't resolved through conversation. By withholding validation, silence shifts the emotional balance. It reminds her quietly that that attention is earned, not guaranteed. And that realization lands deeper than any words ever could. Silence removes reassurance, and in doing so, it reveals self-worth. When there's no emotional reaction after rejection, the mind has nowhere to anchor certainty. Most people expect a reaction because reactions help justify decisions. When you don't argue, don't plead, and don't try to change her mind, you remove the emotional evidence she would normally use to feel settled about her choice. Silence creates a vacuum, and that vacuum invites doubt. Without your response, she loses the feedback loop that would normally reinforce her decision. There's no emotional resistance to push against, no validation that she made the right call because you reacted strongly. Instead, there's calm absence, and calm absence forces reflection. She starts replaying moments, conversations, and feelings she may have dismissed too quickly. Doubt doesn't rush in, it creeps in quietly. Rejection often feels certain in the moment, but certainty weakens when it isn't reinforced. Silence denies reinforcement. With time and space, emotions resurface without distraction. She remembers the good moments, she reconsiders the connection. She wonders if she acted too fast or misunderstood your intentions. These questions wouldn't appear if you were still emotionally available because interaction would drown them out. Silence also removes the ability to externalize responsibility. If you reacted emotionally, she could tell herself your response confirmed her choice. But without that, responsibility turns inward. She begins asking whether the decision came from clarity or from impulse, fear or emotional overwhelm. That internal questioning is uncomfortable because it challenges self-trust. The absence of pressure also changes perspective. When you're no longer present to influence her emotions, she can feel them more honestly. And honest feelings are often more complex than the reasons given during rejection. Attraction isn't logical. Emotions don't disappear just because a decision was made. Silence gives those unresolved emotions room to surface. What makes this process powerful is that it happens without your involvement. You're not persuading, you're not explaining, you're not trying to win. Her own mind does the work. That's why doubt formed through silence is deeper than doubt created through conversation. There's no argument to dismiss, no words to reinterpret, just reflection. As doubt grows, so does awareness. Awareness of what was lost. Awareness of what might have been misunderstood. Awareness that silence often carries more truth than reaction. This doesn't guarantee a change of heart, but it guarantees emotional processing. And emotional processing is where decisions are often reevaluated. Silence removes justification and doubt follows naturally. After rejection, most people expect to see weakness. They expect emotional collapse, anger, bargaining, or a visible drop in confidence. That expectation is so common that it becomes part of the emotional script. When you don't follow that script, when you remain calm, composed, and silent, it creates psychological pressure, not because you're trying to intimidate, but because emotional strength contradicts what she assumed would happen. Emotional strength after rejection is unsettling because it removes the sense of superiority that rejection can create. She expected to feel above the situation, certain that she had more emotional leverage. Your calm silence disrupts that feeling. It suggests that your stability didn't come from her approval. And when someone realizes they weren't the emotional center they thought they were, it creates internal tension. Psychological pressure builds when expectations are violated. She expected you to be affected deeply. She expected proof that her decision carried weight. Instead, she sees restraint, she sees dignity, she sees self control. That forces her to question her assumptions about you and about the dynamic itself. Strength without reaction feels powerful because it cannot be controlled or predicted. Your composure also challenges the emotional narrative she created. If you were truly dependent, silence would be impossible. If you were desperate, absence wouldn't last. But your behavior tells a different story. It tells her that you have emotional resources beyond her, that you don't crumble when things don't go your way. That realization creates pressure because it shifts the emotional balance. Suddenly, you're not the one seeking validation. She's the one trying to understand what your silence means. This pressure isn't aggressive, it's quiet, shows up as restlessness, curiosity, and second guessing. She may feel an urge to check on you, not because she wants to reconnect immediately, but because your strength disrupted her emotional certainty. Silence backed by strength creates unanswered questions, and unanswered questions create tension. What amplifies this effect is consistency. Anyone can stay silent for a day out of shock. Emotional strength is staying composed over time, not posting emotionally charged messages, not indirectly seeking attention, not sending mixed signals, just continuing life with stability and direction. That consistency communicates that your reaction wasn't accidental, it was intentional, and intentional strength carries weight. Psychological pressure grows when someone realizes they can't provoke a reaction, no anger, no sadness, no pleading, just calm absence. That absence becomes loud because it contradicts expectation. It forces reevaluation without confrontation. Strength after rejection doesn't seek revenge or validation, it simply stands, and standing firm quietly is what creates pressure without saying a word. After rejection, attention is supposed to stay on her choice, on what she decided, on why she said no. Most men remain stuck there, replaying the moment and trying to correct it. But silence changes the direction of focus. When you step away without resentment or explanation, the spotlight slowly shifts off her decision and onto you. And that shift is far more powerful than any attempt to change her mind. When you disappear with dignity, she no longer gets to measure herself against your reaction. There's nothing to compare, nothing to validate her position. Instead, she begins to notice you not as the man who was rejected, but as the man who didn't chase, didn't beg, and didn't try to negotiate his worth. That difference matters. It reframes you from someone seeking approval into someone who knows his value. Silence after rejection often highlights strength that was previously overlooked. When you're no longer trying to be chosen, your independence becomes visible, your self respect becomes clear, your emotional boundaries stand out. These qualities are easy to miss when someone is emotionally available. Absence brings them into focus. She begins to wonder how you're doing, what you're building, and why you seem unaffected. That curiosity shifts perception. This shift also changes the emotional narrative. Instead of her thinking, I rejected him, the thought becomes, he accepted it and moved forward. That acceptance feels mature, it feels grounded, and maturity increases perceived value because it signals long term stability. People are drawn to those who can handle disappointment without losing themselves. Silence also removes the emotional role she expected you to play. You're no longer the one seeking closure or reassurance. You're no longer emotionally orbiting her decision. That removal creates space for her to evaluate you without ego or pressure. And when evaluation happens without resistance, truth surfaces more easily. What truly elevates your value is that silence aligns your behavior with your self worth. You don't argue with reality, you don't try to force connection. You respect the decision and respect yourself at the same time. That balance is rare, and rarity increases value. It separates you from the majority who react emotionally and stay stuck. Even if she never reaches out again, this shift still benefits you. You stop defining yourself by rejection. You move forward with clarity and strength, and if she does reflect, the image she holds isn't of a man who was turned away, it's of a man who stood firm and continued his path. Silence turns rejection into self respect, and self respect is always felt.